He does not need a visible counterstatement. His strength lies in being the kind of figure the next reign could place near the center without turning the ceremony into a debate about the past. Sophie's role also matters. When she appears, she completes Edward's image of disciplined service. When she is absent from certain high-profile moments, royal watchers ask whether absence itself is becoming part of the message. It remains unconfirmed that any absence reflects palace strategy, and ordinary explanations may be entirely true.
Royals have posed for a new formal photograph. Of course, your eye is drawn to the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton. You notice there she's the only splash of color in this picture, but take a close look at her tiara.
The camera was meant to capture royal elegance, but one brief moment changed the mood. Catherine, Princess of Wales, entered wearing a tiara linked to the late Queen's legacy, and as Queen Camilla looked on, viewers began asking whether they had witnessed admiration, unease, or the first sign of something deeper. At first, the scene looked exactly like the kind of royal occasion Buckingham Palace knows how to stage: state guests, cameras, and an atmosphere designed to project confidence to the world. King Charles III stood at the center of ceremony, Queen Camilla carried the dignity of the current reign, and everything appeared to be another managed display of British royal tradition. Yet the most powerful moment did not come from a toast or official announcement. It came when Catherine entered the room. That entrance mattered because royal jewels speak in a language older than modern public relations. When a senior royal woman wears a historic tiara, she is not simply choosing an accessory. She is stepping into a line of memory, carrying associations of duty, inheritance, loss, triumph, and rank. And when that jewel is connected in public imagination to Queen Elizabeth II, the emotional weight becomes even heavier. That is why the camera seemed to find more than beauty. They found symbolism. Catherine, calm and measured, appeared not as someone chasing attention, but as someone being quietly wrapped in the visual language of the monarchy's future. For many viewers, her entrance felt like a bridge between the late Queen's long reign and the era that will one day belong to Prince William, the Prince of Wales. It was a moment of elegance, but also of succession, continuity, and quiet royal power. Then came the detail that sent royal watchers into discussion. Footage appeared to show Camilla reacting as Catherine entered. The moment was brief, and Buckingham Palace has not publicly explained it. No one outside the room can honestly say what Camilla thought or felt in that instant. A camera can exaggerate a pause, flatten a facial expression, or turn an ordinary glance into a mystery. But the reaction was replayed because the image touched something larger than one expression. It placed two royal women into the same frame at a moment when their meanings were very different. Camilla is queen beside Charles now, with the title, duty, and public position that come with the current reign. Catherine is not queen yet, but her future is already present in the way people watch her. One woman represents the complicated path that brought Charles to this chapter. The other represents the next chapter many people are already imagining. And between them was a tiara heavy with memory. That is where the tension begins. Was Camilla simply observing Catherine's entrance with normal attention? Was she admiring the jewel? Was she registering how strongly the room had shifted toward the Princess of Wales? Or did viewers read their own understanding of royal history into a moment that may have been far simpler in reality? The palace has given no answer, and perhaps it never will. But royal stories grow because the public senses a deeper question beneath the surface. In this case, the deeper question is about who now carries the late Queen's legacy most convincingly. Charles inherited the crown. Camilla stands beside him. William is the future king. But Catherine has become one of the clearest emotional links between the monarchy's past and its next public image. She wears tradition in a way that feels restrained rather than forced. She appears in historic jewels without seeming overwhelmed by them. And after her period away from public life, every formal return carries a new emotional resonance. This is why her appearance felt so significant. The Princess of Wales has not returned to royal duty with loud declarations. She has returned carefully, selectively, and with a sense of quiet control. She is no longer seen only as elegant or dutiful. She is increasingly seen as resilient, and resilience has become one of the monarchy's most valuable qualities in a period marked by uncertainty, health concerns, and transition. That trust is the first real layer of conflict in this story. If Catherine is allowed to wear pieces strongly associated with the late queen, what message does that send? It may simply say that she is a senior royal fulfilling a formal role at a grand event. But to many observers, it says more. It suggests that the monarchy is gradually teaching the public to see her as the keeper of continuity, the woman who can carry old symbols into a new reign without breaking their meaning. For Camilla, that symbolism is delicate. Her official position is secure, and it would be unfair to suggest otherwise. She has spent years working within the royal family, and now performs her duties beside the king. But public emotion does not always move in the same direction as official rank. Some symbols attach themselves to memory more than to title. The late queen's world, Diana's shadow, and Catherine's future all meet in a way that can make any shared royal scene feel charged. That does not require hostility. It does not require a confrontation. The power lies in the visual contrast itself. A current queen watching a future queen enter beneath the weight of royal memory is enough to make people pause. In monarchy, even a pause can become a story, and this is why the moment matters beyond the evening. It revealed how quickly Catherine's symbolic role is expanding. She does not need to dominate a room to become its emotional center. The symbols around her do much of that work. The tiara, the setting, the memory of the late queen, the presence of William, and the watching eyes of the world all combined to create an image that felt larger than ceremony. Was this simply one beautiful royal appearance, or was something larger beginning to shift? That question is why viewers kept replaying the footage. The answer may not lie in Camilla's face alone. It may lie in the fact that so many people were ready to believe the moment meant something. That readiness tells us that the monarchy's future is no longer distant in the public imagination. It is entering rooms, wearing historic jewels, and quietly changing how every other figure is seen. So the first chapter of the story is not about accusing anyone of hidden motives. It is about understanding the silent language of royal power. It is about how one tiara can bring the late queen's memory back into the room, how one entrance can shift attention, and how one captured glance can open a much larger conversation about loyalty, legacy, and succession. Because if Catherine's appearance truly carried the weight viewers sensed, then the most important question is not what Camilla looked like in that second. It is why the room seemed to change when Catherine walked in, and what that change may reveal about the future shape of the monarchy itself. Because if Catherine is becoming the figure through whom the monarchy asks the public to trust its future, then the tiara was never only a jewel. It became a signal of where confidence is beginning to gather. Not confidence declared in a palace statement, but the kind that appears when an institution allows one person to carry symbols that millions already understand. That is why the moment had consequences beyond the camera clip. A royal jewel connected to the late queen does not simply reflect the past. It asks who has the discipline to carry that past forward. For Catherine, that question has become central to her public role. She is not being watched only as William's wife or as a senior working royal. She is being watched as a future queen whose every appearance helps the public imagine the next reign before it begins. This is where the story deepens. The monarchy does not prepare the public for change through one dramatic announcement. It does it slowly, through repeated images, a place beside William, a careful return to duty, a historic jewel chosen for a formal evening, a calm expression beneath the weight of ceremony. Each image adds another layer until the public begins to understand the message without anyone inside the palace having to say it aloud. But that silent method carries risk. When the future is shown too clearly, the present can begin to look unsettled. Charles must remain the center of the crown, and Camilla must continue to stand beside him with visible dignity. Yet Catherine's symbolism now reaches into a different emotional space. It is not about replacing the current reign. It is about reminding people that the monarchy has somewhere to go after it. For Camilla, the difficulty is not simply that Catherine looks significant. The difficulty is that Catherine's significance feels rooted in memories many people already cherish. The late Queen's reign still carries deep emotional authority. Diana's story still lives in the public imagination. William's future is already understood. When Catherine wears a tiara connected to that world, viewers bring decades of royal memory with them. This is why some observers focused on Camilla's brief reaction. It may have been nothing more than a natural glance, and no one should claim to know her private thoughts. But the public interest reveals something important. People were not only looking for tension between two royal women. If Catherine's rise benefits anyone first, it benefits the monarchy itself, because the crown is always searching for figures who can make continuity feel natural rather than forced. Palace statements can explain duty, but they cannot create public trust on command. Trust gathers around people who appear steady when the atmosphere is uncertain, and that is why Catherine's symbolism has become so valuable. Yet that value does not sit in isolation. When one figure becomes the clearest emotional bridge to the future, everyone around that figure is pulled into a new arrangement. William gains strength because the public can imagine his reign through the calm partnership beside him. Charles gains reassurance because the next chapter appears prepared, not improvised. But Camilla faces a more complicated comparison, not because her title has changed, but because the audience now reads different kinds of royal legitimacy through different women. This is the hidden dynamic behind the tiara moment. The palace may have intended a formal, elegant appearance, but the public interpreted a transfer of emotional meaning. That does not mean a transfer of power has occurred, and it does not prove any private conflict. It means the image seemed to confirm something already forming in the public mind. Catherine is becoming one of the safest faces of royal continuity. But was this really about one royal evening, or was it part of a longer pattern? Catherine's public role has been built gradually, almost carefully enough that the full change is easy to miss. Over time, she became a working royal, then the mother of children in the direct line of succession, then Princess of Wales, and now, after personal difficulty and a measured return, she appears to many as the figure who can soften the monarchy's future without weakening its authority. That journey gives her a kind of credibility no tiara alone could create. Jewels can elevate a person visually, but they cannot create trust where none exists. If Catherine's appearance carried weight, it was because the public had already accepted the deeper story surrounding her: patience, family, endurance, restraint, and a refusal to turn royal pressure into spectacle. The tiara simply made that story visible in one concentrated image. This is where Camilla's position becomes more sensitive. Her path to the throne beside Charles was never simple, and public memory has not forgotten the emotional history attached to it. She has worked steadily, but her symbolism remains tied to the current reign and to a past the monarchy has had to carefully manage. Catherine, by contrast, is tied to anticipation. The public looks at her and thinks forward. That difference changes the emotional temperature whenever both women appear near the same symbols. They were looking for evidence of a larger transition, a moment when the future seemed to enter the room with such force that the present had to acknowledge it. And if that interpretation is correct, then the palace faces a delicate challenge. How does it allow Catherine to carry the late Queen's visual legacy without making Camilla appear less central? How does it celebrate continuity through the Princess of Wales without turning every appearance into a comparison? How does it prepare the country for William's future reign without making Charles's reign feel like a temporary bridge? These questions matter because royal power is built as much through perception as through protocol. Titles explain rank, but symbols shape feeling. Camilla may hold the official role of queen, but Catherine increasingly holds the emotional role of future continuity. Those two positions can coexist, but they create different kinds of attention. One is tied to the current order. The other is tied to anticipation. And anticipation, in monarchy, can be difficult to contain. That is why the tiara's history matters so much. It carried the aura of women who shaped the crown through different kinds of strength. The late Queen's strength was endurance. Diana's strength was emotional connection. Catherine's strength, at least in the public mind, appears to be controlled resilience. When those meanings meet in one jewel, the person wearing it becomes more than herself. She becomes a point where royal memory gathers. This can be a gift to the monarchy because Catherine reassures viewers who worry about the institution's future. She gives the next reign a familiar face and makes tradition feel less distant because she wears it with restraint rather than theatricality. But the same gift can become a burden. The more the public sees her as a symbol of stability, the less room she has to appear ordinary, tired, uncertain, or simply human. This is where William becomes central to the story. His presence near Catherine is structural as much as affectionate. He frames her symbolism within partnership, reminding viewers that the future monarchy will not rest on her alone. When he stands beside her during intense attention, the image becomes less about one woman carrying history and more about a royal couple preparing to carry duty together. Still, the public often reads the image before it reads the structure. The camera captures the tiara first, then the face, then the reaction nearby. The footage appeared, people replayed it, and the conversation quickly moved from fashion to succession, from beauty to power, from one royal glance to the future image of the monarchy. Was this really about personal feeling, or was the institution quietly protecting itself? Perhaps it was both. Catherine's connection to the late queen's jewels may be rooted in tradition, but tradition can also be strategy. When the monarchy places historic symbols on a figure the public already trusts, it strengthens continuity without needing to argue for it. But that preparation affects everyone around her. Charles must manage the rise of the Wales family while maintaining authority in his own reign. Camilla must occupy her place beside the king while public imagination increasingly looks toward Catherine. William must allow his wife's symbolism to grow while protecting her from becoming overwhelmed by it. And Catherine herself must move through each appearance knowing that every jewel, entrance, and expression will be studied for meaning. That is why the situation is much larger than it first appeared. The captured moment was not important because it proved hidden conflict. It was important because it revealed how ready the public is to see Catherine as the monarchy's future guardian of memory. Whether Camilla's reaction meant anything or nothing, the audience's reaction meant a great deal. It showed that the symbols around Catherine now carry enough force to reshape the conversation all by themselves. And once that possibility became clear, the story moved into a more sensitive place. Because behind the visible beauty of the tiara, another issue was beginning to emerge. If Catherine is becoming the crown's most trusted symbol of continuity, who benefits from that rise, who is unsettled by it, and how far will the palace allow that symbolism to go before it changes the balance around everyone else? Some royal commentators may argue that this is why the palace must be cautious. If Catherine is too visibly associated with the late queen's legacy, it can make the future feel more compelling than the present. If Camilla is positioned too defensively, it can make the present feel insecure. If Charles appears to lean too much toward the Wales image, people may wonder whether his reign is preparing to hand emotional authority onward before the formal moment arrives. The most striking contradiction is that Catherine's power often appears strongest when she does the least. She does not need to push into the center because the symbols around her draw attention on their own. She does not need to make a claim because her future role is already understood. Silence, in her case, often reinforces dignity. That is useful for the monarchy, but it may also encourage the palace to use her stillness as a stabilizing force. And that raises a question with long-term consequences. How much can one person be asked to symbolize before the symbolism becomes a burden? Royal women have often been asked to appear graceful, loyal, maternal, diplomatic, traditional, modern, and silent all at once. Catherine's calm may make that expectation look manageable, but calmness should not be mistaken for ease. William's role, therefore, becomes essential. He is the person most responsible for ensuring that Catherine's growing symbolic importance does not isolate her. When he stands close to her at major events, the image suggests protection, partnership, and shared responsibility. It reminds viewers that the future monarchy is not being built around one woman alone, but around a family structure that must hold under extraordinary attention. But there is danger in making the future too visible too soon. Charles must still carry his own reign with authority. Camilla must occupy her role without every image becoming a comparison. The Wales family must be prepared without appearing to overshadow. And the palace must manage all of this in an age when every clip is slowed down, replayed, and interpreted before the official photographs have even settled. That is why the camera moment became so useful to those trying to understand the deeper palace balance. Whether Camilla's expression meant anything privately is impossible to know. But publicly, it became a screen onto which viewers projected a larger royal question. Is the emotional center of the monarchy moving? If Catherine can enter a room and draw the late queen's memory, William's future, and public sympathy into one frame, then her influence is no longer only ceremonial. It is narrative power. If Catherine reassures the public most naturally, then advisors must decide how often to place her at the center. Too little visibility may waste one of the monarchy's strongest assets. Too much visibility may increase pressure on her and make the current reign appear secondary. The balance is narrow, and every tiara appearance narrows it further. Behind the scenes, that reality may influence decisions the audience never sees, which historic pieces are offered, which state occasions Catherine attends, how closely William stands, how Camilla is positioned, and how Charles balances the present reign with the visible future. These choices may look ceremonial, but they are acts of narrative management. They tell the public where to place its confidence. And if palace observers are right, the most important shift is not that Catherine wore a sacred tiara. It is that the public already understood why she could. The trust had been built before the jewel appeared. The jewel merely confirmed it. That is why the moment felt less like a surprise and more like a revelation of something already quietly decided in the public imagination. But even that did not explain the most sensitive part of the story. Because once Catherine's symbolic authority becomes strong enough to shape public perception, the next question is not whether she can carry the monarchy's future. It is whether everyone around her can accept the consequences of how clearly the public now sees that future taking shape. If everyone around Catherine can now see how clearly the public imagines the future, then the pressure is no longer hidden. It becomes part of every entrance, every camera angle, every historic jewel, and every expression caught for even a second. The palace may intend order, but the audience now watches for movement. That is where the story begins to accelerate. What started as discussion about Camilla's face on camera quickly became a public test of royal positioning. If Catherine enters wearing a tiara linked to the late queen, and the emotional center of the room appears to move with her, then the monarchy has to confront a difficult reality. Its future image may already feel stronger than some parts of its present one. That does not mean any formal role has changed. It does not mean Camilla has been pushed aside, and it does not prove Buckingham Palace arranged the evening as a message. The careful reading is that royal symbolism has reached a point where ordinary ceremony can produce extraordinary interpretation. But interpretation matters because monarchy survives partly through what people believe they are seeing. For Charles, this creates a demanding balance. He must remain the steady center of the current reign, while allowing William and Catherine to appear prepared enough to reassure the public. If the future is hidden too completely, the crown looks uncertain. If the future is displayed too strongly, the present can look weakened. Catherine's tiara moment made that narrow road visible. The king's challenge is emotional as much as ceremonial. The monarchy needs the public to feel that his reign has authority, while also believing the next reign has continuity. When Catherine becomes the figure through whom people read the late Queen's memory and William's future, Charles gains reassurance for the institution, yet he also faces the reminder that public affection is already looking ahead. Camilla's position becomes more delicate inside that frame. Her title is clear, her role is official, and she has carried her duties beside Charles with composure. But the camera moment showed how quickly public focus can move away from rank and toward symbolism. If viewers sense that Catherine carries the emotional inheritance of the crown more naturally, then Camilla's place becomes subject to comparison, whether that comparison is fair or not. A royal woman can be secure in rank and still vulnerable in perception. Camilla stands beside the king, but Catherine increasingly stands beside the public's idea of what comes next. Those are not the same kinds of power. One is immediate and ceremonial. The other is emotional and anticipatory. In a modern monarchy, both matter. This is why palace advisors, if they were watching closely, would likely see a warning about visual hierarchy. Which tiara Catherine wears next, where Camilla stands, how William frames his wife's presence, and how Charles balances his household will all carry new weight. The room can no longer be staged as though viewers are not studying every inch of it. The strongest turning point is that Catherine's symbolism now affects everyone else's image. Her presence strengthens William because it gives his future reign emotional credibility. It strengthens the monarchy because she connects old tradition to modern public trust. But it complicates Camilla's visibility because any moment involving the late Queen's jewels can remind viewers which royal woman feels most connected to continuity. There is also pressure on Catherine herself. Public admiration can become a demand. The more she appears as the calm bridge between past and future, the more people expect her to carry that role without strain. A tiara may project strength, but it also draws attention, and attention becomes heavy when every gesture is treated as history. William's quiet role therefore matters deeply. He is not only the heir beside his wife, He is the person who must help protect the future image being built around her. The stronger Catherine becomes as a symbol, the more important it is that she is not left alone beneath that symbolism. The future monarchy must look like a partnership, not a burden placed on one woman's shoulders. History offers a warning here. The royal family has seen before how quickly admiration for a Princess of Wales can become pressure, and how easily public love can turn into expectation. Catherine's path is different, more restrained and carefully managed, but the lesson remains. When the public invests too much meaning in one woman, the institution must be careful not to exploit that trust. Was this simply a reaction to one royal appearance, or was it part of a wider recalibration? If Catherine continues to appear in historic jewels connected to the late Queen's world, observers will see a pattern. If Camilla is positioned more prominently afterward, observers will see a response. If William remains visibly protective, observers will read strategy. Every future image now has the potential to become evidence. The risk is that the monarchy may accidentally create the comparison it wishes to avoid. It wants Catherine to reassure the public, but not overshadow Camilla. It wants William's future to feel secure, but not make Charles's reign feel temporary. It wants the late Queen's legacy to continue, but not turn every jewel into a silent contest over who inherits her emotional authority. For Camilla, the difficult part is that there is no direct answer to symbolism. She cannot argue with a tiara. She cannot publicly explain a glance. She cannot stop people from comparing her journey to Catherine's future. All she can do is continue performing her role with dignity, hoping consistency speaks louder than speculation. For Catherine, the danger is different. Her challenge is not proving she belongs. Increasingly, the public believes she does. Her challenge is surviving what belonging now demands. The tiara may have confirmed trust, but trust inside monarchy is never light. It brings duties, expectations, and the constant need to appear effortless while carrying a role that is anything but effortless. The story is no longer about whether Camilla was caught in an awkward second. It is about what that second allowed the public to see. Catherine's symbolic power has grown to the point where a single entrance can rearrange the emotional meaning of a room. And when that happens, the palace must decide whether to lean into the future being formed around her, or slow the pace before the comparison becomes impossible to contain. Because the real consequence was not only what happened when Catherine walked in wearing the late Queen's sacred tiara. It was what the moment appeared to reveal about the monarchy's next phase, that the future is now visible, emotionally persuasive, and already reshaping the people around it. But even then, one question remained unanswered, and it could define the entire story. The question is whether the monarchy can allow Catherine's symbolic rise to continue naturally, or whether it must begin managing it more carefully before the contrast around her becomes too sharp. Because what happened in that room, whether read as a simple royal moment or as something more revealing, showed how quickly public attention now gathers around the future. That is the broader meaning of the story. The monarchy is no longer only asking people to respect the crown as an institution. It is asking them to believe in the people who will carry it next. In earlier generations, rank itself could command attention. Today, attention is earned through trust, consistency, emotional intelligence, and the ability to make tradition feel alive rather than distant. Catherine has become powerful because she seems to do exactly that. This does not mean the present reign is weakened, and it does not mean Camilla's position has lost its official weight. The careful conclusion is more subtle. Charles and Camilla still represent the monarchy as it exists today, but William and Catherine increasingly represent the monarchy as the public imagines it tomorrow. The camera moment mattered because it appeared to bring those two realities into the same frame, and for a second, the future seemed to carry the stronger emotional pull. That is why the tiara became so important. It was not simply a beautiful object from the royal collection. It became a test of meaning. On Camilla, a historic jewel confirms rank and royal recognition. On Catherine, it suggests inheritance, preparation, and continuity beyond the current reign. The same diamonds can tell different stories depending on who wears them, and the palace knows those stories can shape perception for years. Some observers will continue to say the discussion has been exaggerated. They may be right in one important sense. A single expression cannot prove hidden rivalry. A brief camera angle cannot expose private motives. Buckingham Palace has not confirmed tension, and responsible commentary must leave room for ordinary explanations. The audience may have turned it into something larger because royal symbolism invites that kind of reading. But even if the interpretation around Camilla's reaction is uncertain, the public response is not. People reacted because the image felt believable within the larger royal landscape. They understood why Catherine, wearing the late Queen's sacred tiara, could feel consequential, why Camilla's presence in the same frame could feel complicated, and why the next reign is no longer hidden behind the horizon. This is where the long-term consequence begins. Every future appearance by Catherine will now carry another layer of expectation. If she wears a historic tiara again, people will ask what message the palace is sending. If she appears at Charles's side, people will ask whether the king is elevating the Wales family. If she is held back from certain moments, people may wonder whether the institution is trying to slow the symbolism around her. For William, this makes Catherine's role both a strength and a responsibility. Her public trust supports his future reign before he has even reached the throne. She gives his kingship an emotional shape people can already recognize. But that same affection means he must guard the balance carefully. If Catherine becomes too heavily loaded with expectation, the warmth around her could become pressure, one of the hidden costs of royal life. For Charles, the lesson is different. His reign must allow the future to develop without seeming overshadowed by it. That requires a discipline few institutions manage well, to prepare succession openly enough to reassure people, but quietly enough to preserve the authority of the present. Catherine's tiara appearance reminded viewers that this balance is already being tested. The future can be introduced gently, but once people recognize it, they do not easily stop looking at it. For Camilla, the path forward may depend on dignity rather than control. She cannot change the public's emotional memory of the late Queen, nor can she erase the affection attached to Catherine's future role. What she can do is continue to represent the current reign with steadiness, allowing her position to rest on service rather than comparison. That may be the only answer to a form of symbolism that cannot be argued with directly. And for Catherine, the deeper truth is that her greatest power may also be her greatest burden. She appears to carry history gracefully, but history is not light. The more people see her as the bridge between the late Queen's example and the future crown, the more they will ask of her silence, her composure, her presence, and even her absences. A tiara can place someone in the line of legacy, but it can also make the expectations around that person difficult to escape. That is why the story was never only about one reaction. It was about the monarchy discovering, perhaps in real time, how much meaning now travels with Catherine before she even speaks. It was about the public recognizing that the next chapter of the crown may already have an image, a tone, and a face. And it was about the delicate unease that appears when the future begins to look more emotionally settled than the present. Royal observers will keep watching because the next signs will not come through dramatic announcements. They will come through placement, jewelry, ceremonies, portraits, and the quiet choreography of family hierarchy. They will watch whether Catherine is given more visible symbols of continuity. They will watch whether William steps further into the frame beside her. They will watch whether Camilla's role is shown with renewed emphasis, or whether the palace allows...
The British royals have posed for a new formal photograph. Of course, your eye is drawn to the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton. You notice there, she's the only splash of color in this picture. But take a close look at her tiara.
The cameras were meant to capture ceremony, elegance, and royal tradition. But as Catherine, Princess of Wales, entered wearing a tiara forever tied to the late Queen's legacy, attention shifted to one brief reaction from Queen Camilla. Was it admiration, discomfort, memory, or something far more revealing? At first, the evening appeared to be exactly what the monarchy wanted the world to see. A grand royal occasion, carefully arranged, beautifully lit, and filled with the kind of symbolism only the British royal family can create. King Charles III stood at the center of the event. Queen Camilla carried her official role with familiar composure, and the palace setting seemed designed to remind everyone of continuity, dignity, and tradition. Yet almost immediately, the public conversation moved away from the diplomatic purpose of the evening and toward one image that felt impossible to ignore. Catherine, Princess of Wales, arrived wearing a historic tiara deeply connected to royal memory, one many viewers associate not only with the late Queen Elizabeth II's reign, but also with the long emotional story of royal women who have worn or protected the monarchy's most recognizable jewels. In a room filled with diamonds, gowns, medals, and ceremony, it was Catherine's entrance that appeared to change the atmosphere. And then came the camera moment. Footage from the evening appeared to show Queen Camilla reacting as Catherine entered the room. It lasted only briefly, and Buckingham Palace has not publicly attached any meaning to it. No official explanation has been given, and it would be unfair to claim we know what Camilla was thinking in that instant. But royal watchers began replaying the moment because in royal life, a glance can become a question, and a question can become a story the palace never intended to tell. Was Camilla simply acknowledging Catherine's arrival? Was she admiring the tiara, the gown, or the confidence with which the Princess of Wales returned to a major royal stage? Or did the moment feel charged because of what Catherine was wearing? A jewel carrying echoes of the late Queen, of royal duty, and of the future monarchy beginning to take shape around the Wales family? That is why the story matters. It is not just about a tiara. It is about what happens when a future queen appears, wearing history in front of the current queen. It is about the delicate balance between present authority and future expectation. It is about the way royal symbols can quietly elevate one figure while forcing everyone else in the room to be seen differently. Catherine's return to such a visible ceremonial setting carried emotional weight even before the jewels were considered. After a period of private health struggles and a carefully measured return to public duties, her appearances have been watched with unusual tenderness and attention. For many people, seeing her step back into royal life has not felt like ordinary attendance. It has felt like reassurance. It has reminded viewers that the future of the monarchy still has a calm and familiar face. That emotional response gives Catherine a rare kind of power. She does not need to speak loudly to become the center of attention. She often communicates through stillness, through careful gestures, through the steady way she enters a room already filled with history. And when that presence is paired with one of the monarchy's most meaningful tiaras, the message becomes even stronger, whether it was intended or not. The tiara itself carries a long and complicated emotional life. It is not merely a beautiful royal ornament. It belongs to a lineage of women, memories, and public associations that make it almost impossible to view as decoration alone. Royal jewels are inherited symbols. They are passed through generations, but they also collect meaning from the women who wear them. A tiara can begin as craftsmanship, become a family heirloom, and eventually turn into a public signal of status, trust, and destiny. That is what happened here. Catherine did not simply arrive wearing diamonds. She arrived wearing a story, and that story contains several layers. It recalls the late Queen's long reign and her careful stewardship of royal tradition. It evokes the memory of Diana, Princess of Wales, whose connection to certain royal jewels continues to stir deep emotion among the public. It also points forward to Catherine's own future, because every time she appears in a historic royal piece, observers see not just the Princess of Wales, but the woman who may one day stand beside William as queen. That is the tension at the heart of the moment. Queen Camilla is queen now. Catherine is the future. One represents the current reign and the long, complicated journey that brought Charles to this chapter of monarchy. The other represents continuity beyond it, a future many viewers already imagine with William, Catherine, and their children at its center. In a palace room shaped by tradition, those two meanings can exist together, but they are not the same. So when cameras appeared to capture Camilla's reaction, the public did what the public always does with royal symbolism. It began to interpret. Some saw nothing unusual at all, only a brief expression magnified by speculation. Others believe they saw a flash of recognition, as if Camilla understood immediately that Catherine's entrance had shifted the room's emotional focus. Still others suggested that the moment touched something more sensitive, the enduring power of jewels connected to women whose legacies still shape the monarchy's public imagination. The responsible truth is that no one outside that room can know for certain. A camera angle can mislead. A single expression can be misunderstood. A royal woman can look serious for 1 second and be turned into a headline by the next morning. That caution matters. But the reason people kept watching the clip was not because they needed proof of conflict. It was because the image seemed to capture a deeper royal contrast that already existed. Camilla's public role has been built through endurance and gradual acceptance. She has spent decades moving from controversy into official status, from public resistance into the ceremonial center beside the king. Her journey is one of persistence, survival, and institutional recognition. Catherine's path is different. Her image has been built through patience, restraint, family life,